How about now?
Yes.
All right, good. All right, so let's begin. So last week we were dealing with the topic of the Jewish slave, Eved Ivri, and which on the surface seems strange because the first mishpatim, the first laws of social justice were introduced with the Hebrew servant, the Jewish slave, which to our modern minds seem completely unjust. So I don't want to go through the whole shir, but who would like to make a quick summary of that? Who was here yet last week?
Kenny, Shira. I attempted to actually give over some of that in a shir that I gave the other day myself. So
Right.
hopefully I did justice.
I love a shir that's got dividends. Keep on paying off.
So essentially, I guess we learned that there is the concept of a servant that's different than our modern concept of slavery. And that the slavery, if you will, that servitude was very specific to two circumstances. The first circumstance being when somebody is poor and destitute and they don't even have money to, let's say, pay for the clothing on their back, and they're selling themselves into slavery in order to be able to be cared for, essentially, as a safety net from the system. And the other one is if they have done something wrong, they've stolen, and now they've sold that money. They've used the money that they've stolen, and so they don't have the ability to care for themselves and to give back. And it's for a period of time that's defined by, I believe, 7 years. So it has an end date as well.
6 years, right? Well done, Shira. I mean, to put it very simply, is that basically the first institution that the Torah teaches about mishpatim is essentially an adult foster home. It's a rehabilitation program for people who have fallen all the way down, whose wagon all the wheels have fallen off, and so instead of it being an act of domination, it's an act of chesed. What are some of the unique, strange laws if you have a Jewish slave? What are some of the rules?
One rule is that the slave should be treated equal to the master. So the master can't use fine linen if the slave is not using fine linen.
Whatever you eat, they eat. You're having steak, they're eating steak. You're having a fine Merlot, they're drinking a fine Merlot. You are wearing Armani, they're wearing Armani, which is something which is, completely opposite of, the movie that came out. Did anybody here see the movie 12 Years a Slave?
Yes.
Right, so it's graphic. The viciousness is like absolutely graphic. So this is completely different than that. Okay? Okay, so I want to... now, what interesting halacha is that, as Shira pointed out, there are two circumstances with which a person becomes a slave. Now, by the way, we introduced this because the class prior we did the mitzvah of Shabbat, and we discussed last week that all these laws of social justice are prerequisite because 2 chapters later it talks about Shabbat. We discussed it at length last week, and you can check out my YouTube channel and watch it. Okay, so I want to get into the issue of social justice. I named the class Corruption in Rabbis. And tragically, if you open up the papers, especially about things going on in Israel, it's not an uncommon phenomenon. So it's interesting. I want to take from our subject matter we've been doing and get a deeper sense here. So let's go to the very first verse. Let's read the first pasuk together. Ve'ela hamishpatim asher tasim. Here's the key word: lifnehem. God's telling Moshe, these are the mishpatim, the civil laws that you have to put before them. Who is before them referring to?
Maybe the Kohanim.
There are no Kohanim yet.
Oh, damn.
Good guess. You're warm, actually, in a certain sense. Who is Moshe presenting the Mishpatim to?
Maybe the elders of Israel?
You're warmer.
Is it all of the Jews?
Well, so the answer, so it's on one hand, it's all the Jews because everybody's bound by civil law. But who is responsible of administering the civil law and
Judges?
supervise it? Exactly, judges is exactly correct. And in fact, from this verse, they learn these are the mishpatim that you are put before you, and the Talmud, the Rambam says as well, before you, Jewish judges, and not hedyotos, untrained people. Before you, the Jewish judges, and not in front of secular, non-Jewish judges. And from there, they learn there's a prohibition for one Jew to take another Jew to secular court. Unless the other Jew does not want to go to a Jewish court, then the Jew goes to the Jewish court and tells them that I'm involved in a lawsuit and I need permission to go to the regular court. Because basically, if these are God-given civil law, you can't be saying, if I walk into the New York State Appellate Division Court with a fellow observant Jew, what am I really saying? I'm saying that God's law is inferior to take care of our business, and I need to go to the man-made system called the United States law to determine our thing. So I just want to alert you to that from the very first pasuk of the parsha of Mishpatim is the prohibition that the Mishpatim are given over to the Jewish judges, A, and B, you're not allowed to use the non-Jewish courts unless the person categorically refuses. And even in that, you got to get permission from the Jewish court to use the secular court. Have anybody heard that before? Is that news to you?
I've heard something like it.
Okay, so but if you think about it, it's quite logical. If God's giving us divine civil law, why if I go to the secular human law, I'm basically degrading the value of the Jewish law. I'm saying the Jewish law is inadequate, is fundamentally unjust to serve the needs of adjudicating this dispute with my fellow Jew. So I just wanted, it's really not the subject of our thing, but I just wanted to share that with you. So this whole chapter, and actually not one, but 3 chapters, is addressed to the Jewish people as whole, as Stacy said, but it's specifically to the administrators, which are the judges. The judges. Okay? We're gonna go to the Rambam's, the mitzvah from the Sefer Mitzvot. We're going to go to mitzvah 176, Pasuk now 176. Who would like to read? All right. Come on, Gilad. You're on.
Okay. Sorry. Honey, can you read?
Okay. The 176th mitzvah is that we are commanded to appoint judges to implement the Torah's commands, to force those who have turned away from the path of truth to return to it, to command the performance of good and the avoidance of bad, and to carry out the punishment of transgressors, so that the positive commandments of the Torah and their prohibitions should not be dependent on the desire of every individual.
Okay. So as the good people at Chabad who have put this online, translated the Rambam Sefer Mitzvot into English and put online for free. So Mitzvah 176 is to appoint judges. Okay. Why? Why don't we have self-regulation? In fact, if you listen to many people, let's say people who are from a Tea Party or libertarian state of mind, they'll say, we don't need more government, we need less government. We don't need them telling us what to do. We could do the right thing ourselves. So what does the Ram say is the key issue, the key need of having judges and the judicial system as a whole.
It sounds like it needs to. It sounds like it needs to be absolute, so that it's not up to each individual to decide for themselves what's right or wrong.
Correct. See, the key thing is I'm going to highlight this. This is the key thing right there. It should not be dependent on the desire of every individual. So, in other words, it is, and we're going to get to the other side of the fence. But on this, but when it comes to self-regulation, often or nearly always leads to self-dealing. You know what I'm talking about? Self-dealing. In other words, for example, in 2008 we had the big meltdown of the financial system in the United States. And what came out was, for example, in the whole area of derivatives and creating all these very sophisticated financial instruments, there was a lot of self-regulation. How did that self-regulation work?
A lot of Upper East Siders became very wealthy.
Well, that was how it worked initially, but then what happened?
They became wealthy.
What happened in, I think it was September 2008. I think I remember it vividly.
We lost like all the investment banks.
Right. So you're right. So first of all, it was Bear Stearns that disappeared in one day. And as a fundraiser, I'm looking at this thing. I'm watching the screen. I'm in this place, and I'm just literally watching the stock fall like a rock. And then it went on to the next firm was AIG, I believe. That was nearly destroyed. And then they had the other one, which was, what was the other one with an L?
Lehman Brothers.
And there was no bailout. So the bottom line is we nearly saw the entire United States, and by extension the world's financial system, literally disintegrate in our whole, in front of our eyes. And part of it because a lot of it was based on self-regulation, that they're going to do the right thing. They're not going to do these crazy things of taking on massive, billions and billions of dollars of crazy leverage. They're not going to do that. And lo and behold, they were doing that. So there's definitely a place for regulation. Now, how much, to what extent, the devil's in the details. But the key thing is that the terrorists maintain is that the Jewish people can't be involved in adjudicating their mishpatim by themselves. You know what I'm saying? It needs a system of judges. Let's just get some of the facts down just while we're here. Let's read a little more.
Okay. Included in this mitzvah is that these judges be appointed in a hierarchy. In an appropriate city, 23 judges are appointed who meet together by the gate to the city. This is a small Sanhedrin. In Jerusalem, the high court of 70 judges is appointed. One, the Rosh Yeshiva, also called the Nasi by the sages, is appointed over these 70. They gather together in a place singled out for them. In a place where the population is too small for a small Sanhedrin, 3 judges are nevertheless appointed to carry out minor judgments and to pass along major cases to the highest court. Okay, so basically it's the same thing as American law follow the same thing. You'll have your small court, claims court. You move up, which in here is in Judaism is a 3-man court, 3-judge court. Then you move up to a court of 23, which is the first full-fledged city, which can do even capital cases. And ultimately you have the Sanhedrin Agadol, the Great Court, which is actually, does anybody know where it's located? It says in Jerusalem, but where in Jerusalem? Where is the Sanhedrin situated? Literally in the room next to the altar in the temple, showing the centrality of justice. It's on the campus of the Beit HaMikdash. Let's go on. This is something which is very interesting. Go ahead. In addition, inspectors are appointed to visit the markets and inspect people's business practices in order to ensure that even the slightest injustice does not occur.
Yes. So there was in Judaism, we don't have an idea of just a policeman. We'd have the shofet, the dayan, the judge, and the shoter and the enforcer go through the marketplace and do the inspection together. So they would check out, is the guy's weights? Is the guy doing his business properly? And so they'd be able to, so if somebody says, hey, that guy ripped me off. So they'd be able to have immediate application of justice in the court system. Let me just see if I want to go on to.
Everyone else is talking besides us.
Okay, that's enough I want to do here. Okay. Now, as we talked about, who does the so let me ask you a simple question. This area of the Eved Ivri, who supervised the entire process?
Moshe?
Moshe as an individual? Well, I don't know if they had it I don't know, it was actually actualized in the land of Israel. He tells them about it, but I don't know if they had it in the time of the desert. Who's in charge of supervising this entire system?
I guess ultimately the Supreme Court, the Sanhedrin Hagadol.
That's on the national level, but at least the court could be the court of 23 of the town. But the key thing is there cannot be a slave selling of a Jew. Either, first of all, if the guy's the thief, he's sold by the court itself, or if he's the destitute guy, it's literally under their administration. They're not under their administration, but under their supervision. What is some of the rules about selling the Jewish slave? Anybody remember?
That if you cannot, I think you cannot sell a Jewish slave. You have to.
Well, you can't. No, I'm saying you. But all right, but he has. Let's say he's selling himself. How is that? I was going to. I don't know if I did. I'm not sure if I did it. Let's do a halacha 5. This is in the laws of slaves. All right, Stacy, go give us a read over here.
Number 5.
Yeah, halacha 5.
Neither a person who sells himself nor one who is sold by the court should be sold in public on an auction block, nor in an alley as slaves are sold. As Leviticus 25:42 states, he shall not be sold as a slave is sold. Instead, he should be sold in a private and honorable manner.
Okay. So see clearly that the halacha does not want to have a slave trade. And a Jewish slave is not to be sold, as was done in the ancient times, on an auction block, which they had even in the American slaves. They had the auction block. What was that? They put him on this, literally on a block, so people could look at him, inspect him to see, what level of how in shape he is, how what kind of work they can expect to get out of the guy. But rather, it has to be done in private, and done in a private. Because really, remember, we're doing rehabilitation, so we're not trying to embarrass. We want to. Ultimately, it's an embarrassment, right? Because the guy is either a thief, he needs rehabilitation, and he's poor, or he's super poor, and he has to be taken in the family because he can't even function himself. So, one second, get turn off the phone here. Hold on, bear with me.
Huh?
And I'm back. So I have a simple question. Why does the court the basin have to have so many rules and regulations on this? What is the drive pushing all this?
I guess it's so easy to take advantage of the weakest person in society. So these are all these things to protect the slave, the would-be slave from his from would-be exploiters.
True. Now, why do people want to exploit other people? Let's get with a basic question. Obviously, if there's all these regulations to ensure that the institution of slavery in Judaism is something of an act of chesed and not injustice, you have to assume that there's a powerful force to make this an activity of exploitation and ruthlessness and injustice. Where is that coming from?
I mean, I think people often look for an easy way to get ahead. It's easier to climb on the backs of somebody else than to work hard yourself, kind of thing.
Okay. Right. In other words, it's certainly, look at in America's, the South, the entire economy was based on people, the slaves, picking the cotton. So there's definitely economic value, but more than that. There's more going on there. That's true.
Well, there's also, I guess, sexual exploitation, maybe of a female slave.
Okay.
Or maybe of a male slave. And also maybe just the idea of dominating can be, psychologically can be very fulfilling sometimes.
Yes. That seems to be the key element. In other words, it's all of the above, but I would have to say one of the core elements, and even though there may not be a slave trade in America, the desire to dominate another, to take advantage of another, is a universal desire. Those who are sociologists and anthropologists, talk about the idea of what they call the alpha male among gorillas. What is the alpha male? Who can tell me what the concept is, the alpha male? So the concept of the alpha male is that when you have a group of, let's say, a herd of gorillas, pack of gorillas, I don't know what the exact term for a group of gorillas is, pack, group, herd, I don't know. There's always going to be a fight for dominance. Who's going to be the top dog, the top gorilla, what they call the alpha male. And that gorilla who wins, or beats up the other ones, gets all the resources, the best food, the best women, the best everything. And there's a fundamental desire of mankind to dominate everybody else, to be the top dog. I mean, 2 days ago or 3 days ago on Sunday, 1 billion people tuned in to watch the game of football, the Super Bowl. I was one of them. I'm from Seattle. We did pretty good on Sunday. I don't want to brag, but anyways, I don't want to dominate, but if I may, the point of the matter is that there is the whole game of football is basically a controlled, a less vicious sport, a gladiator sport of domination. So that is really the state of nature. So it takes a lot to avoid that. So therefore, the first activity, the Jewish people are being introduced to the new society through the civil law. The judges what are they getting? The laws of Eved to tell you about how they're going to, number one, how do they deal with the weakest of their society? And to show that instead of slavery being an act of injustice, it's an act of chesed, which tells a whole new concept. Now, go ahead. Question.
Maybe I'm thinking outside the box, but I would think if this is such a natural instinct, what about the protection for the Eved Lo Ivri, for the Gentile slave? Isn't there also an important aspect to protecting a non-Jewish slave, considering that he's also built in the image of God?
Yes. So the answer is there is protection. There is protection for him. That's a whole thing. They're not the same, but you could never have what you had in America before 1865. That was.
But
profoundly unjust on every level. So the Evid, what they call the Evid.
But how would
Go ahead.
Oh, we have to treat others the way we want to be treated as minorities ourselves. So how would we feel if Germany or America treated real Germans or real Americans better than they treat Jewish people? Like, why don't we treat minorities, slaves, just as well as we treat Jewish slaves? I mean, surely God would have thought of something that universal because God created all people.
Correct. So the Evid Kanani, it's a whole. I don't want. That's a whole. It's in a certain sense. It's another topic, which requires a whole class. But let me just sort of say it like this. Number one, the answer is they are protected. You're not allowed to. You can't just treat them like in a unjust fashion as well. It's how Judaism by taking how you deal with an immigrant society. There's a whole sheer in that. I want to develop that properly, but we'll get to that. We can't. The problem is that when we go through all the different topics of mishpatim and all related mitzvot, one connects to the other. So we'll get there. We'll get there. But I want to still stay on this. Now I want to ask you a simple question: how did the Jews treat their fellow Jews? How did this work as a system historically? Anybody know?
Can you elaborate the question?
How did the Jews fare in following the system of halacha? I heard that. Not so well. Not so well is true. More than not so well. Does anybody know how specifically poor they did? Anybody know? Anybody know the example?
Unfortunately not.
Okay, so it's interesting that we talk about the story is told as a haftarah to the parsha, the haftarah taken from Jeremiah, from Yirmiyahu, from Mishpatim. And courtesy of Jeremiah 34:8-2. 34:8. Okay, 1 second. Let me just. Okay, give me a little second here. We're going to read a little taste of that. Not so much. Where's my Jeremiah? 38. Okay. Hold on, what did I just say? 34. Oh, that's why I got it wrong. 34. Never mind. Okay, 34. Okay. Let's read from. Okay, let me set up the story. The story is that the Jews have been invaded by Babylonia. The resident prophet is who?
Deborah.
Nope, that's many years before. It is Jeremiah, Yirmiyahu. Who is the king? King is King Tzidkiyahu. Or if you're Southern Baptist, Zedekiah. Okay. So let's start from verse 8. We're going to do a couple psukim here in Jeremiah. Go ahead. All right, who wants to read over here? All right, Stacy, go ahead.
Verse 8.
Yeah.
The word that came unto Jeremiah from the Lord. After that, the king, what's his name?
You can use Hebrew name, Tzidkiyahu.
Sidkiyahu had made a covenant with all the people that were at Jerusalem to proclaim liberty unto them.
Go on.
That every man should let his manservant and every man his maidservant, being a Hebrew man or a Hebrew woman, go free. That none should make bondmen of them, even of a Jew his brother. And all the princes and all the people hearkened that had entered into the covenant to let every one his manservant and every one his maidservant go free, and not to make bondmen of them any more. They hearkened and let them go.
Okay,
But
stop right there. Stop right there. Oh, so this is great. So Hashem tells Tzidkiyahu to go, Yirmiyahu, go tell the people, release your Jewish slaves. All right? Let's go on. Verse 11.
But afterwards they turned and caused the servants and the handmaids whom they had let go free to return, and brought them into subjection for servants and for handmaids.
So they couldn't do it. Couldn't do it. So what did they do? They recaptured them and subjugated them back as slaves, the fellow Jews. And let's see what God has to say about that.
Therefore the word of the Lord came to Jeremiah from the Lord, saying, Thus saith the Lord, the God of Israel, I made a covenant with your fathers in the day and that I brought them forth out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage, saying, At the end of 7 years ye shall let go every man his brother that is a Hebrew, that hath been sold unto thee, and hath served thee 6 years. Thou shalt let him go free from thee. But your fathers hearkened not unto me, neither inclined their ear. And ye were now turned, and had done that which is right in mine eyes, in proclaiming liberty every man to his neighbor. And ye had made a covenant before me in the house whereon my name is called. But ye,
in other words, they made the deal in the base of Mikdash. They were going to do this.
But ye turned and profaned my name, and caused every man his servant and every man his handmaid, whom ye had let go free at their pleasure to return. And ye brought them into subjugation to be unto you for servants and for handmaids. Therefore, thus said the Lord, ye have not hearkened unto me to proclaim liberty, every man to his brother, and every man to his neighbor. Behold, I proclaim for you a liberty, said the Lord, unto those sword, unto the pestilence, and unto the famine. And I will make you a horror unto all the kingdoms of the earth. And I will give the men that have transgressed my covenant, and have not performed the words of the covenant which they made before me, when they cut the calf in twain, and passed between the parts thereof. The princes of Judah and the princess of Jerusalem, and the prince of Jerusalem, the officers and the priests, and all the people of the land that passed between the parts of the calf. I will even give them into the hands of their enemies, and into the hands of them that seek their life. And their dead bodies shall be for food unto the fowls of the heaven, and to the beasts of the earth. And how do I say it? Said Yahoo, king of Judah, and his princes will I give into the hands of their enemies, and into the hands of them that seek their life, and into the hands of the king of Babylon's army that are gone up from you. Behold, I will command, saith the Lord, and cause them to return to the city. And they shall fight against it, and take it, and burn it with fire. And I will make the cities of Judah a desolation without inhabitants.
Okay, so what did God say because the Jews had made the covenant to release the slaves, and then they reneged on their promise, recaptured all the slaves? What did God say he's going to do to the Jewish people and their sovereignty?
He'll take away their sovereignty and cause them to suffer a lot. Right.
So basically, how you treat your Jewish slave is not simply an expression of justice, but it's it becomes a barometer if the Jewish people are worthy of sovereignty altogether. Basically, God says, since they've failed in this way, they're going to lose their sovereignty, and the Beit HaMikdash is going to get burned down. You know what I'm saying? because they couldn't operate on this basic level of justice.
So is there a chance that Israel will be destroyed? Because Israel is one of the most unjust societies in the world.
You're talking about the land? You're talking about modern
Yeah, I mean,
Israel?
in modern society, the difference between the haves and have-nots in Israel is as big as it is in America. It's very, very high.
Right. So, look, I don't have the sense of the divine. We don't have the prophet Jeremiah to share us the divine calculus about what the state of affairs are. All I'm going to say is that the Jews had great difficulty doing this particular act of mishpat, of justice, and they made a deal to do it. They could not do it. Their need to dominate their fellow Jew was so great, and God said, because of that, you forfeited your opportunity to have your own independent sovereignty in the land of Israel, and not only that, you're going to suffer horribly. So it's not simply failing to do an act of chesed, but also to turn it into an act of domination of your fellow Jew is basically violating what is to be a Jew, because basically God's kicking them out of the land of Israel and make them under domination of the foreign invading army. You know, and that's why it's first in the book of Mishpatim, because it becomes a litmus test of what you do about your fellow man. And if you take advantage of them and dominate them and persecute them, that's like the basics. That's why Shabbos is much later, because to become this basic just personality is a cornerstone of what is to be a Jew. Now, I want to turn the table a little bit, because we in America and in Israel, we have a judicial system, but oftentimes we see that that system gets corrupted. Bribes are taken. There is favoritism. There is corruption. So was the Torah not aware of that? You know what I'm saying? I understand to have no judges and everybody does what they think is good in their eyes is anarchy and the seed of disaster. What about the other extreme? What about the judges? How do you know they're going to do? How do you know they're not going to be involved in self-dealing like many examples of corporate America did during the whole run-up into the financial crisis?
But isn't that the whole concept, that we have free will, and that even the judges have the choice to do right or wrong?
True.
And that hope that you don't judge everyone on the merits or shortfallings of certain individuals as an entire people?
Correct, but what is structurally in place to avoid this is not going to happen?
The checks and balances, you mean?
So in America, you brought that's a good point. In America, the way that we solve the problem is we assume that a person cannot be trusted autonomously, and therefore we have competing. We don't give everybody the power. We don't give President Obama or any president all the power. The executive branch has a certain measure of power, and it checked with the legislative powers and the judicial powers. We have the three arms of the government, which are checking each other out. You know what I'm saying? That's the checks and balances. So that's one methodology. So I want to explore with you that there's another concept at play here about the mishpatim and really the shoftim, the judges, and how that issue is dealt with and addressed.
What about reward and punishment? It sounds here like that's certainly at play.
Well, for sure. But I'm just saying is that because the dayanim, the judges, are given a lot of power. And when you have power, you have corruption. So how is that now you're not going to solve it, because the answer is there's going to be human frailty, there's going to be corruption. But what is the key point here to deal with that? Or what are some of the things at play? So I want to share with you one thing here. The Rambam, I want to share with you, the Rambam has 14 books of Mishnah Torah. The last one is called Sefer Shoftim, the Book of Judges, where they have the law concerning the court and the judges. And in there, he has a thematic pasuk. He has the first thematic pasuk, which is from Avram, B'Shem Hashem Ke'olam. And Avram called out in the name of God, the Lord, God of the universe. Okay? Which is the entire book of the Mishnah Torah. The theme is to teach humanity about the life system, lifestyle in which they can have a relationship and a closeness to God. A. This is the 14th book. And then he quotes a very interesting verse from Mishlei, Proverbs, which I'm now going to give you in English. Mishlei 4:24. Here we go. Let me just over here. Bible. Proverbs 24. Here we go. All right. Okay. Take it from 23. Who would like to read?
Okay. I guess I'll do that. I'll read.
Ed.
These also are sayings of the wise. To have respect of persons in judgment is not good.
Now, it means respect. It means, the Hebrew word, haker panim. The English better is have favoritism. It's not to have respect. It means favoritism.
Mm-hmm.
That's not a good translation.
Okay. He that says unto the wicked, thou art righteous, peoples shall curse him, nations shall extricate him. But to them that decide justly shall be delight, and a good blessing shall come upon them.
Okay, stop right there. So it's interesting. So the question is like this. So the question is like this. So Proverbs written by King Solomon, and these two verses are the thematic verse of the entire book of Judges. Okay? So obviously the Maimonides, the Rambam went through the entire Tanakh and thought that these two psukim really give the whole motif of the book. Okay? So he says, to have favoritism of persons in justice is not good. So the major challenge, of course, is favoritism, which of course includes getting material benefit, seeking bribes, etc. And to the extent that you say to the wicked, you are righteous. Now, explain the following thing. People will curse him, and nations will extricate him, or will degrade him, or will rage against him. But to them that decide justly shall be a delight, and a good blessing shall come upon them. Why will people have such a extreme reaction to corruption of the judges that cause that declare that the wicked is in fact righteous? Why does that result in such an extreme reaction of cursing and rage?
We have higher expectations of the judges. We would think it would be hypocritical if they were not able to uphold this level of honesty and honor.
Correct. But there seems a lot of energy here. Why the energy to that we want to curse them and we want to rage against them? It's like, I can understand deeply disappointed. I would see the word very saddened, depressed even. Why the aggressive response?
Well, everyone's also dependent on them. So it's not just that it impacts the judges themselves. It's a trickle-down effect. The entire society, it's like the tone that gets set.
And maybe also it looks like it might be happening in other nations, right? Not just in Israel.
Well, it says that it's not limited that not only the Jews but the nations, everybody's going to react. It's going to be a international condemnation.
Well, a society that's not just eventually breaks down, I guess.
Yeah, but I want to. But it seems to be like what Shira is bringing up is that it brings out certain feelings, and I want to explore the feelings. Why does it? When people see that going on, they have a sense of they want to curse them, and they want to rage against them. And the reverse, they do good judgment. There's a delight. There's a blessing will be upon them. Seems to be very extreme. It's either.
Is it also like a warning? So like you can, for them to learn how grave of a sin it is? Like I think of some things we read in the Torah, like, like this is really bad and this is like really, really bad.
Right, correct. For sure. Obviously, if the Ram took this verse and put it in front of the book of the laws of the judges to be studied by the judges, that's obviously a big warning sign. It's 100%. And it is really bad. See, there's an interesting thing by justice. Because the judge is the authority figure. So we have to understand, how does the judge become a judge? What happens? And there's two modalities. In America, you become a judge, because you're proficient, but also because you're also politically adept. You develop, you know what I mean? Many judges are appointed. For example, the Supreme Court judges are appointed, right? And oftentimes when there's a Republican president, they're going to pick a judge whose positions more exemplify the Republican position. And conversely, if it's a Democrat president, they're going to try to pick judges that reflect them more of a Democratic sensibility. You know what I'm saying? So it's based on one part scholarship and the other part based upon political criteria. Okay. So, but the thing is like this, that the judge is the authority figure. And part of people's feelings toward authority figures are complicated. There's one hand that there's a positive respect toward an authority figure. And there's another part of you that wants to be rebellious against an authority figure. Doesn't like an authority figure. In fact, flats out hates an authority figure. So when it becomes clear that the authority figure has failed you and the society by allowing an injustice, it allows a vent to the great rebellion against authority altogether. You know what I'm saying? In other words, in the 60s, when the authority figures of America allowed and promoted a war which was viewed as unjust, the Vietnam War, there's a tremendous backlash of rebellion and throughout all society. When President Nixon was implicated in Watergate, and it saw that the great men of our society are basically crooks, it unleashed a tremendous amount of rebellion against all authority. You know what I'm saying? Because really, there's always a balance. There's a part of us that want to be rebellious and wants to throw off all authority. On the other hand, we want to respect authority. So when they're acting good, there'll be a positive affiliation. And when there's a clear act of injustice, then it allows a vent of all the anger and rebellious energy to come out at them. Now, I want to finish up by going into a deeper point. I want to talk about the ideal. How does a Jewish judge become a judge? So a Jewish judge starts off his life as like everybody else, as a starting off in a family, and his Abba, his first Rav, his first educator, teaching him the base of Chumash and Jewish values with his mom. Then he gets passed on to be educated by the Malamed, the teacher, the Rebbe, whether it be either in a formal setting or an informal setting, formal education. as he himself grows, his knowledge deepens, his appreciation of the wisdom of Torah deepens, and his interaction with people is that they start to see him as being somebody who is helpful, a person of chesed, a person of good morality. They ask him questions. They're happy of what he says. In other words, he has the goods. And it's a natural development. Now, if the Dayan love of Hashem and reverence of Hashem is such that he does not have to, he feels independent in mind and in spirit, that he doesn't need to coalition build with certain parts of society, unsavory parts of society, to get power, because he's not a power-seeking person. He's a person who cares about justice. He's not interested, he has his own job. He's not looking to work off others to be able to be successful. That's a person who's autonomous, who has a love of truth, who's a person who is most likely going to be doing judge properly. And people see him in their interaction as being an honest, independent broker, and they have a measure of confidence that this guy can be a true Dayan in Israel, and will not give in to the desire to curry favor with the wealthy, will not want bribes, will be a certain autonomous figure, and that's the ideal thing. Tragically, this past year in Israel, make it a contemporary perspective, we have the non-halachic and the modern institution called the chief rabbi, the office of the chief rabbi. And the chief rabbi is selected in Israel by voting of 180 other rabbis. And if you read in Haaretz or Yedut Achronot or in Jerusalem Post, it was like an American campaign with buildings of coalitions, Haredi versus modern Orthodox, and all kinds of pressure was being pushed forward and backward, and had a classic. That's really reflecting of not the ideal. And then you have an issue of special interests, and it becomes an unsavory situation, which of course is a turnoff. And now the situation has got to the point that in Israel, if you ask the average secular Jew what he thinks about the rabbinate in Israel, Gilad, as an Israeli expatriate, share with us, what is generally the feeling?
Okay, gladly. So I lived in Tel Aviv near what's his name, the chief rabbi, the Ashkenazi rabbi Metzger.
Yes.
And about 2 years ago, my uncle fought in the 6-Day War.
Yep.
My aunt lost her husband in the Yom Kippur War. My aunt's husband was the youngest pilot in the Israeli Air Force.
Wow.
And so then the secular, but the strongly Zionists, and they said to me that this rabbi is corrupt. And sure enough, like 2 years later, lots of things came out about him in the press.
There's an investigation, an indictment, all kinds of ugliness.
I think there's a feeling in Israel among secular Jews that a lot of rabbinical rabbis are corrupt in Israel.
Right.
Whether it's Das on the Eastern Jewish side, or whether it's Metzger, and that there's a lot of special interests at play. So in general, the system in Israel is very, very problematic, I think. Yes,
and I would agree with you. So that's an example of where there's these coalition building, and it's currying favor and being able to funnel parts of the budget to their cronyism, and all kinds of ugliness is going on. And I just want to share with you that's literally the opposite of what the institution of the Dayanim are supposed to be.
So how do we think that disconnect happens? Clearly there's a huge disconnect.
Well, first of all, the Rambam put it the Rambam put it over here. I'm just going to highlight it here for 1 second on the screen here. The Rambam put it as being the introduction to the book of Shoftim because this is not a problem or a conflict. It is what? It is the conflict. Because if a person is love of Torah and wisdom is incomplete, and their need for security from the wealthy and from the moneyed and from the powerful is greater, then in order to develop these bonds of coalition, they're going to have to look the other way. You know what I'm saying? And it's not so simple. I don't want to minimize, you know what I mean? One of the book of, by the way, you may not be aware of this, but the book of Pirkei Avot is really reflections of the Dayanim, which are also the great sages, about the challenge of working in society while trying to be autonomous and making that breakthrough from being not a person who's currying favor, but a person who's truly an independent figure. You know what I'm saying? And in their growth to make the breakthrough, they start to think about things. Well, what is a friend? Who, you know what I mean? Who is a wealthy person? Who is a strong person? You know, all kinds of reflections about judgment.
But even in America, the Jewish community was behind Clinton pardoning Mark Rich, and he's a person who, you know, a Jewish wealthy person, and you know, I'm not clear why the Jewish community rallied around him.
I don't remember the exact circumstance of the Mark Rich situation, but I don't know what percent of the Jews were involved, but it could very well be. I'm just saying that this issue of on one hand, in other words, you're stuck. To have no judges, you're going to have anarchy. And everybody's going to be involved in self-dealing because every man's a genius when it comes to self-deception. Okay? Just know that. On the other hand, you need to have institution of Dayanim. Now, of course, we see by Yitro, they have to be people of truth and God-fearing people and people who hate unjust gain and all these different things. But it still requires a breakthrough in the person that he has to become this independent person who is objective, who is not subject to being tainted. And it's really, difficult. And as Stacy's pointed out, this is something that they got to be reminded as being, this is your challenge. And otherwise, people are it'll be a breakdown in society. There'll be a rage. There'll be a rage against you, and it'll break down the whole society. That really is fundamentally the thing. And quite frankly, there are many Orthodox people, Gilad, that are saying that the Chil Hashem of the rabbinate is such that it would be a greater gesture of justice of God to completely dismantle the institution.
Wow. Thanks for saying that. I appreciate you saying that because my family in Israel hates the rabbinate, and my uncle, who's married for many years, has refused to get married by the rabbinate, so he didn't get married to his wife. He only got married in Cyprus later on.
Right, exactly. Now, there is a positive. I don't want to leave. It's not my way to leave with a negative vibe. You know, there's a whole group of rabbis, and we'll end with this, called Sohar. There's a group of they don't have a term like in Israel, but they call them Dati Leumi, or we roughly translate modern Orthodox Zionist rabbis, who take a friendly approach, a positive, open, and warm, engaging approach to their secular brothers and sisters, and tries to educate them in a very warm and positive way. And they've had tremendous success. You know what I'm saying? So there is possibilities of greatness here, but it's you know what I mean. But when a secular Jew, you know, is sort of pressured to give a large tip, quote unquote, to the rabbi, who really, since there's no separation of church and state in Israel, it's really a benefit in Israel that you get a free rabbi to do your wedding and burial and all the stuff for being a Jew. You know what I'm saying? That once that happens, that Jew, that secular Jew, forever forever, the door of the Torah has been closed. You know what I'm saying? It cannot, and because the damage has been done. So I want to share. This is not just.
What I'm feeling.
Yeah, sure.
Sorry, Penny. What I'm failing to understand, though, is in this situation, wouldn't it be that the person who becomes a chief rabbinate or as an individual who becomes a judge is someone who should have been already steeped in Torah and someone who's been sort of passed the litmus test? What are we doing wrong that they're not passing the litmus test, that there is no criteria that's being upheld?
No, many are, but I'm just saying, as Gilad pointed out, that because there's a mixing of special interests going on, and it becomes a political phenomenon, and the person being selected for the chief rabbi is not necessarily the best one, but rather is really the agent of the stronger special interest. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
And I'm not saying, Rabbi Metzger did not know any Torah. He most certainly does. And I don't even know if the charges are true or not. We'll wait till the special, the court is done. And I'm not saying that he is whatever, but I'm just saying that the whole system as a whole is designed to create this unholy relationship about, special interests and money and justice. The same thing that we have in America. Basically, if you are a corporation, right, and you need a certain kind of tax break, you can literally buy that tax break. What do? You hire consultants, many of which who were former Congress people, senators, etc. And they know how to get the thing done. And that in one of these appropriation bills on page number 9,000 in Part B will be that they will create a law that only basically applies to your company, and you basically can get freed from most of your taxation. This is, I'm not telling anything you didn't know about. So the problem is in America, it's rife, but hopefully we want the Torah system to be better. I'm sharing with you the ideal. The fact that the Rambam brings his pasuk in the opening gambit of the book of Judges shows you that this is not a conflict, this is the conflict. And what Gilad's sharing with everybody here is that, and you read the Jewish papers over the last 12 months, there's been cases of corruption with rabbis, and it's basically emerging from a person whose fear of heaven is less than his need for security with the rich and the famous and the powerful.
So, Penny, given that as an observant Jew, what do you think is our obligation when we hear things being said about the rabbinate, about this system that's so faulty?
Look, like you hear anything. On one hand, you don't want to rush to judgment, because remember, there's a bias either way. There's a bias to say, oh, they're all the same, and it's for sure they're all guilty, or to say the other extreme, oh, chas v'shalom, they could never do something like that. It's an impossibility. You know what I'm saying? Both like say, look, I don't know what happened, but and if it's really shown to be true, is to support change. Look, we're not in Israel, so we're not in a sense, we're not directly connected to that. But it's a difficult situation, and you can't, since they're involved in the governmental structure, you can't avoid it. So it's something that's it's an intrinsic challenge.
Is one solution to have a separation of church and state in Israel?
Well, in a certain sense, that would be, in the given circumstance, it might be better. But ideally, there is no, in Judaism, there is no separation between church and state, because Judaism is that there's one law, and that's for all humanity. Torah is for everybody. So you can't have Torah and non-Torah. But in the circumstance, it might be a greater expression of justice. That question that is outside my pay grade, Gilad. I'm not able to answer that question. But I want to at least bring it to your mind. I want to bring certain possibilities. I want you to show you some of the tenets and the issues from the Pasuk to the Rambam and to contemporary times. That's what I want to do. I can't answer these questions.
I have one more question. Is there a correlation between following the mitzvot, like tefillin and tzitzit, and being a more moral person? Has that been shown in any study?
Yes, if it's done properly. That's the short answer to a long question.
Okay.
So it's part of a moral lifestyle. But of course, you can put on talis and tefillin and be a thief. I mean, that's been also well established. All right, guys, we'll leave it here. We'll continue next Tuesday, and I want to wish everybody else all the very best and stay warm.
Thank you.